In this chapter, we're going to explore ethical and socially responsible behavior. Let's turn our attention and discuss ethics. It is so important to discuss ethics as part of a business curriculum because businesses, including large corporations, have gotten themselves in a lot of trouble by behaving both unethically and illegally. And large corporations such as Enron were seen as organizations that would never go out of business. Enron was the largest energy company in the world, and they no longer exist because of both unethical and illegal activities that company engaged in. So first, let's discuss what ethics are. Ethics are standards of moral behavior that are seen, the behavior that are seen as acceptable by society as right and wrong. It's important to note it says by society, right? Because what may be seen as ethical or unethical in one country may differ than what's seen as ethical or unethical in another country. It's also to point out that ethics and legality are not exactly the same thing, right? So something can be seen as unethical and still be legal, and something may be seen as ethical and yet viewed by the law as being illegal. So let's talk through that for a minute. So let's say you cheat in college, right? You plagiarize a paper, you cheat on an exam. If you're caught, right, that is definitely not just if you're caught, but if you do that act, it's an unethical thing to do. If you are caught, you will get in trouble, right? You might fail the assignment, you might fail the class, you might get kicked out of the university. However, you will not go to jail because cheating on a college test or plagiarizing a paper in college is not illegal. So that's a demonstration of something that is definitely unethical to do, but not necessarily illegal. The flip side of that is something that you might see as ethical to do, but might be seen as illegal. So let's say if you've ever flashed your lights at an oncoming car to warn them about a police officer that is doing his radar to try to catch people speeding. A lot of people would say that they do that because it's the nice thing to do to help the other driver. However, if you lived in Australia, that would be seen as illegal, right? It would break a law in Australia if you were doing that, even though you thought that was the ethical thing to do. I also want to discuss ethical dilemmas with you. So an ethical dilemma is when you must choose between two unsatisfactory alternatives. So an example of this is if we were live in the classroom together, I would ask the class, hey, how many of you guys think it's unethical to kill someone? And most hands would go up, right? But then if I ask you, well, what happens if you come home from work or school, wherever you're coming from, and you walk into your dorm room, your apartment, your house, and somebody is hurting somebody you care about and love, right? And there's a gun on the table right by you, and you know that if you don't shoot them, they might kill the person you love. So you decide to pick up the gun and you shoot them and it kills them, right? A lot of people would say that that is an okay thing to do because you saved the other person's life, right? But it's an ethical dilemma, right? You want to save the person. You also don't like the idea of killing somebody. So both of those choices might be seen as unsatisfactory generally, right? And in the moment you make the decision that you make. That is an example of an ethical dilemma. And then finally, it's important to point out that organizational ethics begin at the top. People in the organization tend to behave as their leaders do. So it's important to build a culture of ethical behavior throughout the whole company. And the best way to do that is to start at the top and have ethical leaders in leadership positions. Because of the numerous scandals that happened in various industries throughout the last 20 plus years, a number of companies have chosen to adopt written codes of ethics. A lot of times these codes of ethics are hung up at employee entrances so that employees see them as they walk into the building every single day. For the purposes of this class, I want you to know the difference between compliance-based ethics codes and integrity-based ethics codes. When we talk about compliance-based ethics codes, these are codes that emphasize preventing unethical and unlawful behavior by increasing control and penalizing wrongdoers. So in other words, it's saying, hey, here's our ethics code, here's the behavior we expect, and if you violate it, we're either going to put you on probation, we're going to fire you, we're going to punish you in some kind of way. The opposite of that is an integrity-based ethics code. What this does is it defines the organization's values. It makes everybody aware of the ethical behavior that is expected, right? And then it creates an environment that supports ethically sound behavior and stresses a shared accountability. So what this means is it builds ethical behavior into the company culture, right? So from day one, people are told, here are our values, here's how we want you to behave. And the whole environment supports that because people in the company behave ethically, the leaders behave ethically, and it just becomes a way of doing business and behaving within organizations that have integrity-based ethics codes. A lot of organizations have set up ethics offices that help employees communicate anonymously when they see something unethical or illegal happening within organizations. One way that people can report illegal or unethical behavior is by being a whistleblower. These are people that are inside an organization and see that unethical and illegal behavior happening. In response to significant financial fraud that was perpetrated by large corporations, the government has enacted several laws regulating businesses and actually protecting whistleblowers. So earlier in the presentation, I mentioned Enron, which was the energy company that actually had an accounting scandal, and they were standing in front of their shareholders saying everything was okay when they knew that financially they were not okay. There was an employee, her name was Sharon Watkins, who worked at Enron, and she saw and noticed irregularities and issues. And so she tried to first bring those issues up internally to people at the executive level who did not listen to her. So eventually she went and reported it externally. Whistleblowers previously had been fired by various companies. And so when all these scandals broke really in the 90s, early 2000s, there were several of them at the same time. The government passed those laws in order to protect the whistleblowers. So these are people who, again, report illegal or unethical activity to people outside the organization. Next, let's look at insider trading. So insider trading is when insiders use private company information that's not yet known to the public, and they use that information to help themselves or to help people in their lives, their family, their friends, things like that. So an example of this, some of you may have heard of Martha Stewart. She was the founder of Martha Stewart Living. She was a really big TV personality, and she got in trouble for insider trading. What happened was she had stock in a company called mClone, which was touting that it had this new antibody therapy that could help with things such as cancer. They received information, the company did, that the FDA was not approving their product. An insider, her broker, actually tipped her off that the stock was probably going to drop because the FDA was not approving their antibody therapy. So in response, Stewart sold her stock. It was about $230,000 in stock. And again, she sold it a day before the company actually announced the FDA decision, right? So she acted on information not yet known to the public. somebody inside the organization knew that she had been tipped off. They actually reported it, which is how Martha Stewart, how it became known that she had the inside information. Martha Stewart maintained her innocence, but she was found guilty and she was sentenced to 5 months in prison, 5 months home confinement, and then she was on 2 years probation for lying about her stock sale. So it just shows, you can't use information that's not known to the wider public in order to benefit yourself or others in your life. That is seen as illegal, and it is also unethical. Now let's look at corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility states that a business should have a concern for the welfare of society and not just to those who own the company or their investors. So there are two viewpoints on this. Some say, listen, businesses have no responsibility beyond providing jobs, which help society, right? And others say, no, businesses should also help the communities that they live in, right? It's not enough just to make a profit and give that money back to just, let's say, the owners, the investors, the stakeholders, the shareholders, things like that. So proponents of corporate social responsibility argue that businesses owe their existence to the societies that they serve, and that they won't do well in societies that are failing or not thriving. Research does show that companies with good ethical reputations attract and retain better employees, they draw more customers, and they enjoy greater employee loyalty. The basis of corporate social responsibility is that there should be a commitment to such basic principles as integrity, fairness, and respect. Many for-profit companies do have philanthropic endeavors as part of their mission. Communities also often depend on companies to help with social programs that make the lives of people in the communities better. So there are many different ways, right, that organizations can demonstrate corporate social responsibility. Many companies, you can go to their website and find their CSR statement that tells you exactly the type of things that they support within the realm of corporate social responsibility. For the purposes of this class, I want you to know these two I have listed here: corporate philanthropy and corporate social initiatives. The first one, corporate philanthropy, includes charitable donations, right? So if an organization has picked, let's say, a charity, and they make an annual donation to that charity, that would be corporate philanthropy. When I worked at the Flavor Company, they supported Juvenile Diabetes Research Fund, JDRF. The employees walked in the walk every year, and we raised money for that organization, and the company also donated to them. Another way that organizations can show CSR behaviors is through corporate social initiatives. This includes some type of philanthropic activity that is directly related to the business's core competency. So core competencies are the main reasons any organization exists. So let me give you some examples. An organization, let's say I'm a home builder, right? And I want to participate in corporate social initiatives. I might donate my time or my materials to Habitat for Humanity, right? Habitat for Humanity is an organization that builds homes for people in need. Another example is when the water crisis was occurring at the height of occurring in Flint, Michigan. Nestle, which makes bottled water, donated truckloads full of bottled water to Flint, Michigan, to the city of Flint, Michigan. So you can see that relates directly to their core competency because Nestle is a food and beverage company, and they donated bottles of water. So I hope that helps differentiate for you the difference between corporate philanthropy and corporate social initiatives. That concludes the information for this chapter. Please let me know if you have any questions.